Hello and welcome back to All Things Money. I'm your host, David Blain. Thank you for joining us today. During the first segment, we talked a little bit about the resurgence of the U.S. fuel industry and how it became a net exporter in 2011. Our largest export product was fuel to overseas, growing demand overseas. We also talked a little bit about the demand for Gulf oil and how the Gulf of Mexico off the coast of Texas is a great place for drilling, and we see more and more activity after the BP Horizon spill. The moratorium was lifted. We see a lot more activity in the Gulf. And so we're challenging people's notion about the United States and gasoline consumption. Our consumption has actually been decreasing since 2007, so it's good. I mean, we've got some very positive trends in place that we want to make sure that you are aware of. Just like in investing, trends continue for a period of time, but eventually they will stop, come to an end, change direction. You know, things like gold, may be changing a trend. The same thing with the U.S. and its consumption. You know, people that extrapolated gasoline and oil consumption into the future have been sorely disappointed because the consumption has dropped off. And so that just illustrates the danger of extrapolating something from the past into the future forever. You have to be aware for changes in trends, whether they be individual companies or sectors or countries or things like that. And so we want to talk about 12 companies that, according to this, the Business Insider, might disappear in 2012. Of course, we're all familiar with the big blow-ups, things like Lehman Brothers in 2008. Merrill Lynch had to be acquired by Bank of America, Countrywide, also acquired by Bank of America, things like that, going back to the late 90s, early 2000s. Of course, there was the Enron disaster, WorldCom, Adelphia Communications, things like that. So there are a fair number of large blowups. Just recently, MF Global. But some of the ones that I want to talk about are what we would call famous brands. I don't know, Enron, was that really a famous brand? Was Lehman Brothers really a famous brand? No. I mean, people in the industry may have known about them, and they were certainly had a very high name recognition in certain circles, but they weren't what they call famous brands. You may have seen in the news recently that Kodak is filing for bankruptcy. Kodak has been around for a long time. They do have some patents, but they will probably go by the wayside in 2012. They could sell off their brands, some of their patents get restructured, but they just did not make the transition very well from film and pictures to the digital industry. I mean, it's so much, not as easy to get a monopoly when anyone can have a digital camera and print the pictures out at home. It's very hard for Kodak to compete. So we may see Kodak go away. Sears has restructured itself over the years, and they merged or acquired Kmart to try to keep their brand going. But Sears has been having a lot of difficulty over the past few years, and their brand has also been tarnished. If you go back, I remember when I was a kid, every Christmas we would look through the Sears catalog about what we were going to order. And before the internet, the Sears catalog was a very, very viable product. They did a lot of business that way, as well as their retail stores. But with the advent of the internet, once again, the catalog business is, or at least for Sears, is not what it used to be. Avery Dennison. You may not even know who this is, but some of its products are, Avery labels, for printing return address labels, things like that. They also have highlighter pens, and it just sold its consumer and office products business to 3M for $550 million, and so that was basically the bulk of the business. Once again, a very long-running company that may see its end. Saab, as the article states, is a pretty easy call. Saab hasn't made a car since April and filed for bankruptcy in Sweden in December. Has a very strong brand, especially, in the U.S., maybe not quite so much, but they also had a fairly robust military industry. They used to make fighter jets and engines for military aircraft and things like that. So they had some diversification there. It wasn't just about cars, but Saab been around for a long time. Once again, probably going to go by the wayside this year. Aon. Aon is a very big insurer, especially overseas. It has a big sponsorship contract with Manchester United, which is the equivalent of the Green Bay Packers of soccer over in England. And his name has been very strong globally for a number of years. But in the U.S., it's just not working. I happen to have my professional liability insurance is underwritten by Aon. So it's a good company, but they just don't have the brand and the marketing here in the U.S. It may go by the wayside. CA Technology, otherwise known as Computer Associates, was a high-flying technology firm, and they had this big accounting scandal in the mid-2000s. They changed their name to CA Technology to try to save the brand, but they're not really looking too good. They may go under. Here's another big one, Yum Brands. You may never have heard of Yum Brands, but Yum Brands owns KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut. It owns those 3 franchises, and it operates under the brand name Yum Brands, and it was spun off of PepsiCo a number of years ago, and the restaurants seem to be doing pretty good, but the brand is having some problems. Well, that brings it up to our next break here. We've got a few more companies to go through. We'll cover when we come back after a few short messages from our sponsors. So for All Things Money, I'm your host, David Blain, and we'll be right back.